Welcome to DroneCast, Rethinking Public Safety One Drone at a Time, a podcast by DroneSense. We explore real-world applications of drones and emergency response, offering a close examination of evolving trends in drone technology and its impact on public safety. I'm your host, Jon McBride, Director of Customer Success here at DroneSense.
Welcome to DroneCast, Rethinking Public Safety One Drone at a Time. I'm your host, Joe Kearns, and today we're thrilled to welcome Jon McBride to DroneCast. Jon is a true pioneer in the drone industry with over 2 decades of experience shaping its growth and evolution. Known for his passion for education, Jon has played a key role in elevating training standards for drone operators worldwide. His work as the Vice President of Technology and Training at Autel Robotics was instrumental in developing the Autel Robotics Training Center. In part 1 of our conversation, we'll explore Jon's journey into the industry, the evolution of drone technology, and his insights on training and innovation. Let's dive in. Jon McBride, it's great to have you on the podcast. How are you today?
You make me sound good.
I hope the audience can see this right now because you look great at the moment in your rocking chair in front of a fire. The aura of the nickname Drone Jesus, it's just all coming together right here. I love it.
Yes, of all the stuff that you touched on that great introduction, it makes me sound, high up on the industry as far as what it is. But in essence, I've been passionate about, using drones, seeing drones, why they do, but it goes a little bit further than that. We'll discuss that on why, where, how I started, why it was an important thing to me, and then how it's kind of transitioned, how now we're seeing a little bit larger dynamic, larger scale, and more people getting involved. We've seen also a lot of attrition with companies where, you got people buying out each other, technologies being shared. And so it's a very interesting time right now. And I'm glad to be a part of it. And the fact that people keeping me involved and keep me invited, people like you to be on a show like this is very humbling to me, but I'm still considered one of those guys, so to speak, that you want to, talk to and kind of get some opinion, get some ideas, and get some thought process going on some of this stuff. So thank you again for having me.
Awesome, Jon. It's so glad to have you here. You really have had a fascinating career. What initially drew you to drone technology?
Well, it does go back to when I was a kid. I was an avid RC guy. So RC, radio controlled, building airplanes initially. And then I built helicopters before I joined the Marines in '92. I was fascinated with that, just remotely operating things. I loved building old World War II aircraft. I loved hobbling things together. So this gave me a lot of, as a kid, gave me a lot of understanding of aerodynamics and things like that as well, just as a hobby. And then when I joined the Marine Corps in '92, I was trained to be an electronics tech. So that opened a door to understand a little bit of electronics, reading schematics and looking at engineering and what we were doing with some of the stuff I was involved in there. And it was just meteorological equipment, but basically electronics in general. And that led to, learning how to solder, learning how to connect things, learning how to do things, troubleshoot things. And then moving on, I was also a marksmanship instructor. So I was a PMI, a professional marksmanship instructor in the Marines. And that gave me a really good skill set of understanding, that I have a skill, I have something that I know how to do. And now I have to teach people how to do that as well as me. And so there were a lot of people in the Marines that couldn't shoot straight worth a damn. And that's kind of a prereq in being in the military, is making sure you shoot the gun straight. So, and that really gave me some opportunities there to kind of craft curriculum that they had written that was baseline curriculum to then adapt it a little bit to what the needs of the student were. And, some students were really good. No problem shooting that rifle, the M16. I trained people on the M45 and the M9. So, and I did that for a short time in my Marine Corps time, about 2 years. But again, it was a kind of a backbone of where I learned how to train people. And then, further on, I went into other, jobs just to make the jobs. But when you talk about 20 plus years of drone stuff, my transition was changing from a hobby to actually building things that had purpose. So I had a hobby shop. I ran a hobby shop for a number of years and bringing people in to learn the hobby, RC trucks, cars, planes, helicopters. And then all of a sudden drones started coming. Drones were available. DJI, others had started to manufacture things that were available in the hobby shops. People were coming in that I had not had, that were not traditional customers, that were buying this stuff, and they had no idea how any of this stuff worked, So, I'd take people out in the parking lot. I'd show them how the drone, and we used to call them multi-rotors back in the day because there was a little problem with using the word drone.
I haven't heard that in a while. Multi-rotor.
Yeah, multi-rotor. Because, when you talk to somebody that just doesn't know much about our hobby and you tell them it's an RC helicopter, they know exactly what you're talking about. Hey, I'm building a helicopter. They know what that is. I'm building an airplane. They know what that is. I'm driving a truck. But when you would say multi-rotor, people are like, what is that? Well, it's a drone. Now I know what that is. I know what a drone is. So that became the synonymous word for a multi-rotor. But in essence, they're all drones. They're all remotely controlled. They're all doing something that doesn't have a manned person controlling it inside. So I had to overcome that and I say overcome, meaning that there's a lot of people in the hobby. There's we don't call them drones. We don't shoot missiles off of them. We don't do that, and I'm like, well, it's hard to explain to the general public that I fly a multi-rotor versus a drone. And if you just say drone, they know exactly what that is. Now it's become, again, a synonymous word, a very common word for describing a multi-rotor, so to speak. And again, my transition was to then take the hobby of fun and then making something, giving it a purpose. And this goes back all the way to 2001 of building something for a job. And that's where it kind of started with me. And I was just doing this in my basement. I was just doing it on the side of all the other, real jobs I had until about 2008. And that's when it started to get a little bit more involved in really building aircraft.
Became more of a tool than like a multi-rotor hobby.
Yes, 100%. So, even back in 2010, I built a multi-rotor out of a hodgepodge of components for one of our local SAR teams here in Utah. And they were just elated. We solved the problem. And the problem was that we only had one helicopter, that was accessible in the whole state of Utah for search and rescue. So the fact that they could fly something up into the mountains just a bit and kind of bridge that gap of trying to call a real helicopter to help them versus just putting up a drone to look around and check off places that they knew that they had searched. This goes all the way back then. And it took time. It's always taken time to try to adopt technology. But, here we are today, 14 years later after that, and they've got a whole fleet of stuff, So it's really neat to see that progress. So that's kind of where it started, and I just working as a dealer, then into a manufacturer, and then, controlling, training. And then now, even though I'm part of the droning company, I still independently now do things. So I've done a lot of different things.
Well, I'm seeing this intersection of all sorts of different things from a hobby of RC to the training in rifle in the Marine Corps, and kind of this intersection of everything kind of coming together to where you are right now. So it's a really interesting story, John.
Even coming to the trade shows, now we've got trade shows that are focused around that. We didn't have that back in 2008. 2009. Now we have this whole focus of it, and how many different training shows and how many different things that we've been active in, and it's really neat.
Excellent. Well, let's dive into some interesting questions I have for you today, John. One, you get to see a lot of things on the daily and throughout the year in this industry. What is the most interesting or surprising way you've seen drones being used in the past year?
So there's been a huge drive of this DFR concept. And DFR, basically drone first responder, having a drone take off and be remotely controlled from a space in which the pilot's not observing, watching, or doing, is not the traditional way that I would be flying or teaching or showing certain things, like the Dragonfish. You have to kind of keep an eye on it and stuff. And now the DFR concept has really moved into, not having to have that person visibly watching everything that the drone does, is that you're really focusing on the technology to, all of the systems in there, the GPSs, the compasses, everything, to the camera, to really, the software, location to land. DFR is a really big one right now. And as we scale DFR, you can scale this into other things too. DFR is just one name for remotely operating something from a spot. I could fly something here in Utah, in Nebraska, and that would be considered as DFR. However, I could also do inspection on substations. I could check that dam every so often. I could fly from locations after a major disaster. I mean, there's a million things you can do with this concept of doing something, right? So it can expand so much larger than just DFR. But that's kind of the focus right now. Why? Because we have money going into that, So everyone's excited about DFR because all of a sudden money is showing up and going, hey, we want to get a DFR program going, and they have money to try and do that. They're getting money to do that.
Well, you nailed it earlier with your experience with Utah and SAR, and now we're actually like, it's a subsidized like mini helicopter, right? Instead of going out and purchasing a $5-7 million bird, you can have multiple different ones to go through as the first responder in the city or situation. It's a remarkable technology, but I even see this too. Like my focus currently is in public safety, but prior to that was in oil and gas, and I definitely see this as like pad surveillance, inspection, asset management. I mean, it's an incredible tech.
Yeah, just security, like you nailed it. Just having a drone that would sit in a spot over a mine, for an example. You just don't want people messing around and walking through your plate. I mean, that's a DFR. So that concept might be in oil and gas, but it's still the same technology and the same concept. There's no different, and we talked about this, doing this, a long time ago. And unfortunately, nobody had made anything really well yet to do that. And regulatory reasons had made it difficult that you've got to watch the drone kind of thing. You can't sit in your living room and go fly around and go look for somebody. You can't sit in your office and do that. Now we've starting to see a little bit more drive in both regulation and technology. So now you've got DJI that's had their Dock out, then their Dock 2 out. Autel made their Evo Nest. You've got Skydio that's announced one. You've got Hexatronics coming up with these little, landing stations. So it's all going mostly, I believe, into that direction. But you're still going to need the guy that just manually operates and has, range wise, or has to fly that video for a production, or has to do a real estate, thing. That's still going to happen. It's not going to go away. That's still going to happen. But this push to kind of do this DFR concept is really, I think, awesome. It's great. And it makes it a challenge for me, for the traditional guy that, like I said, this is how you shoot a gun. Wait, hold on. You don't even have to do that anymore. You don't have to look down and do that. Now you have this computer and you sit over here and you just point it and it hits it. That's kind of a challenge even for somebody as old school as me to try and learn, well, now how do I come up with curriculums and come up with training and how are these guys doing it? How's the DJI doing it? And maintenance, all these other stuff. So that's where I'm at.
It's multifaceted for sure. And there's so much happening in front of us. And I always make this joke with everyone, but I mean, honestly, if you're not seeking to learn something new each day in this industry, you're going to be left behind. Like, it's just constantly changing. It's fascinating.
100%. And I would say the best position where I was putting out the most content was as a reseller, a dealer at RMUS. I had a number of companies outside of just our standard DJI coming to me to evaluate, to, give feedback, to make things a little bit better, and also sell. Once you sell into the market and you're the guy that sold it to them, you need to be the guy that also knows all the answers and the questions. And that being running a reseller company for, I was there for 7 years, really gave me an opportunity to get my hands on new tech all the time. Now I've just kind of been working with Autel, so I feel like it's interesting that I have to, I still have to keep up with it on what's going on with other manufacturers and what's happening. So, when I show up at the shows, and things like that, you see new stuff.
You've mentioned the drone industry, and there's a lot happening. If you could define the state of this industry, of the drone industry, in 3 words, what would that be and why?
I still think, one word, fragmented. I still think we're very fragmented. I still think we've got a lot of people that are competitive against each other. And, we're watching this to where, we make the best thing. No, we make the best thing. No, we make the best thing. And so, we're still very fragmented. However, the second word is collaboration. We've seen a lot of collaboration with these companies. So that, like, we've got both kind of working against each other, but at the same time, you see, Like, we don't want to be part of that company. We don't want to sell their stuff. We don't want to partner with DroneSense, and then they've got others that are like, absolutely, we built it so that we can run, this software, this thing. And that's why we did it, so that we could collaborate more. So you've got collaboration being a big one, fragmented still being kind of the thing. And I think innovation, like we're seeing, and I say it in a positive but negative way, innovation. What does that mean? When in my hobby, when we transitioned from NiCad nickel metal batteries to lithium polymer or lithium-based batteries, that changed everything. The way things were developed, the way things were made, the products that were now capable of doing what they're doing. And the second part was brushless motors. We were using brushed motors, which are not nearly as efficient, and now we've got brushless motor. Now it's a very common thing, you've got lithium stuff, but back then we were still using plastic and aluminum and carbon fiber to build stuff. None of that has really changed, it's still the same building materials for the last 20 plus years that I've been involved. Nothing has changed, but those two things that developed were huge steps. And so innovation is where we need to be, and continually thinking on how to improve not just flight time or sensors, and things have miniaturized in the innovation side, but we're fragmented. We need better collaboration, and we need innovation to keep driving our industry. That would be my 3 words.
John, well said. I really appreciate that. And something in doing DroneCast, something I keep observing is everyone talking about community, or even creating better community, or having this collaboration world, and it is the state. So it's our responsibility to continue pushing that forward.
Yeah, collaboration would be also, a part of getting the general public to understand what the heck we're doing. We have a very small family here. It's not the aviation industry. It's not the automotive industry. It's not even the computer. We still have a very small, same old guys. Hey, Vic Moss, how you doing? Hey, Adrian Doko, same people. Hey, Joe Kearns, same group of people, that show up at the same shows. Sometimes we get some new blood. We get some new things coming into the market. But for the last decade, it's pretty much been the same old, same old. And we need to broaden the message to the general public. We need more awareness that, that this is what everything's happening. You see in the news that some kid gets saved. We need more of that. You see in the news that the guy that's flying the mapping missions to make sure that your construction in your county is looking good and we need more of that.
Public facing dashboards. I agree.
Yeah, you need more of that on the mainstream medias, or more of that on the channels, so that people really know what it is we do, why we do it.
We're not flying to look in your window.
No. I mean, you're always going to get bad players in every industry. There's still people that crash airplanes, and we don't end the world because of it, But when a guy flies in a stadium and it's like this freak show, yeah, oh my God, we got to shut down the world because somebody did that. That is, again, a lack of education in the general sense of like, that's just not safe. It's not smart. Some of these people have no idea that there's a rule that says you can't do that.
Yeah, they're kind of like, sweet, I get this awesome perspective. Wow.
Yeah, I'm going to go fly that, and here we're in our small little family, a group of those that kind of pay attention, they instantly jump on that. Well, they didn't know that there was a TFR, and this guy's going to go, what the hell is a TFR? I don't even know what a TFR is. We need that collaboration with the general public a little bit more. We need to expose our industry a little bit more. And we need to have, some of these larger news stations talking about the good things, and of course we're going to have bad things that happen.
Well said, for sure, John. So what is one trend in the drone space that you think is overhyped, and one that deserves more attention?
That's a great question. What is overhyped? I think we spend a little bit too much time in the military space. I mean, we as an industry didn't start making things that drop bombs or was in the war effort or building things for war. We didn't start that way, even though I can tell you back in 2001, the Army did come to me and a company I was working with to build basically what these guys are doing today out of an RC helicopter. The technology wasn't multi-rotors yet, but can you make a one-way bomb for us? And I say, well, I probably could build something like that, but But it wasn't like that was the focus, We then took that helicopter, the same design, the same thing, and put a camera on it and built that for our local highway patrol for fatality accidents. And that we built a lot more of those than we built the one-way bomb. So now we're hyper-focused in the war. We have all of this going on right now in Ukraine and other places. And all of a sudden, this huge drive that every company is like thinking, well, how can I sell to the military? How can I sell to this military? How can I sell to this military? And it's almost like we've forgotten that we've got police officers and, we've got firefighters, we've got search and rescue guys, we've got all these people that still need great technology. But, hate to say it, that's where the money is. I've watched it with Autel, and not in a negative sense, but that's the focus, is like, it's wherever the money's at. And some of these agencies, as you know, don't have a lot of money. So why would you waste your time talking to one little police department? Because we have to, because we should. But no, these guys are wanting to buy 5,000 drones that are going to drop bombs on stuff. So I think that's a little difficult. Yeah, a little rough for me as far as a guy that sees what we can do with them positively. And that is positive for a lot of people. But that's a high focus right now, super high focus. And building an SRR drone for the military doesn't really translate well over to a commercial use case, So that's kind of that. What needs a little bit more help? I've been working with VTOLs for a while. It goes back to my grassroots of building an airplane. Now you've got an airplane that takes off and goes. There's a lot of challenges with aerodynamically with a VTOL, but they can go far, they can fly long, they can do. I like to see, that's what interested me so much with the Dragonfish, is that I'd already been flying some VTOL, but their performance wasn't as good as some of the serious crap I've put the Dragonfish through. Holy crap. Even how long I've been flying, I've got over 500 hours on that bird. And there's some times where I'm like, I hope it makes it.
It's the nature of the beast of that style of aircraft too, right?
Yeah, just its design. It can, it's a plane, and a plane has some, are good for some things, and planes are not good for other things. And if you want to take advantage of that flight time, you have to fly it like a plane. And, it's a lot different. I hope to see a little bit more VTOL development and kind of still pushing that. Because as DFR, this swapping back and forth with an M350 every, 25, 40 minutes or so versus just keep that bird up in the air for an hour and a half to 2 hours is really helpful.
Jon, I've spent time with you with the Dragonfish, and it's still to date, when it comes out of the box and it launches, I'm still like a little kid watching it take off I don't know how many times I've seen it take off. I still geek on it. I love it. Could you expand a little bit more on your experience with bringing that to market? And then we'll dive into maybe some training concepts with it too, because I know that's a big focus in your world.
So the Dragonfish was interesting to me because it wasn't a multi-rotor. And there's a million different styles of multi-rotors. You can only make them so many different ways and still call it a drone multi-rotor, right? I mean, there's, it's got 6, it's got 8, it's got this. But as mentioned, the challenge is to make an airplane be a VTOL and land in high winds, operate in the rains, operate at distance. When I first saw the Dragonfish, I was at Army West, and again, I had some experience with other VTOL, mostly for the mapping stuff, mostly mapping. But here, was exactly what a lot of my public safety guys were asking. And at the time, the Trinity, that was made by Quantum Systems, and now they've developed something very similar, if not the same, as the function of a Dragonfish. But they didn't have that. It was just a VTOL mapping system. That's all it did. It didn't have live feed coming back. It didn't have tracking things. It didn't have any of that. But that's what a lot of my customers were like, when can you build me something like that? And I was like, well, out of all the parts and pieces and things and trying to, there wasn't much option. And then here comes this thing. It lands on my deck. I've got like, wow, this is great. How much did you just say it cost though? 120. I'm like, whoa, that's going to be tough.
Big sticker price, but then when you put it up against like a helicopter and buying a new bird, or even the maintenance of a year and so on like that.
Yes, it definitely, those are great points right there. Great points against manned aircraft, not against other drones, because it's not like another drone.
It's a fish.
It's a fish.
Yeah, no.
So then here, with all of the years of flying standard traditional multi-rotors and a lot of other people that then bought Dragonfish or got the Dragonfish, I noticed immediately that there was going to be some challenges in operation and expectation of the fish. I saw, even before I came to Autel, boy, this doesn't operate anything like a normal drone. There are things and hazards and performance things that are way different. And if I was to show somebody how to fly and operate this safely, I don't know how to develop, I'd have to work with the manufacturer, of course, and that was Autel as a reseller. And are they going to be able to develop a training that I wanted? So when all of a sudden it came to Randall Warness asking me to come to Autel, and I was like, this is a great opportunity to do exactly what I was just saying. I want to be able to create training around this aircraft. We had the Evos, we had the future things, the Max, the normal stuff, that pretty much intuitive and simple to figure out. You don't really need a high level of training except to check a box and say, hey, John showed up and showed us how to fly an Evo. But this thing, Dragonfish, needed that level of, let me see how you're operating it. Let me see if you're making aeronautical decisions that make sense. Let me make sure that when you do your pre-flight checks that everything checks off, because if it doesn't, the failure could be quite catastrophic. It's large, it's big, it moves 45 miles an hour, all of these things that are traditionally different. And that was what was highly interesting to me. And so yes, with the ARTC, I needed a way to track individuals. I learned early on, especially with RMUS, that it was really hard to bring public safety guys to do a training for 5 straight days. It was almost impossible to get them to hang out somewhere and learn how to fly their $150,000 aircraft for 5. They're like, do we really need to do that? Yes, you need to do that, because it is not the same drone as what you've been flying. It's a much different.
I want to dive back into some of these training questions I have with you, but I want to expand on you actually training me on the Dragonfish. And that day, I remember that day like a lot, because it was wonderful. It was so interesting. And I remember you're like, hey, all right, so here's the moment that it comes from VTOL from a quad to VTOL, and there it goes, and like how it goes quiet and flying it in those large figure eights and all of that. But then something else happened while we were just flying around that day of training. And you end up using this video for I think for many demos for a long period of time. Could you elaborate on that? It was just a very interesting experience.
So that was what, I-95? Is that correct? I-95?
I believe, yeah, we were right out of Fort Lauderdale.
Yeah. So, we had just spotted as we were flying around that smoke coming up, and, what is that? It wasn't very far away.
And how many miles away was that?
Maybe 2 miles away. But it was there in no time. And, eyes on the bird. We knew we didn't have any air traffic. We had ADS-B coming through. We knew we didn't have any of that, but it was an opportunity to kind of see what was going on. And, the response, having the fire itself doing its thing. So having the response to the fire, was just a looky-loo kind of thing. But it really gave an opportunity to show what that thermal camera could see versus the zoom. And even on our way back, we could still see what was going on as we're flying back. The camera's turned backwards. We're still watching what's happening as we're returning back. So, it was a great, and yes, I've used it for training many a times to kind of show how the camera operated and what it was looking at and how it was showing what it was showing, and people are like, wow, I could have absolutely used that for my public safety group. I could have used that for sure.
And that wraps up part 1 of our conversation with Jon McBride. We've covered his fascinating journey from RC enthusiast to drone industry pioneer, explored the evolution of drone technology, and gained valuable insights into training and innovation. Join us next time for part 2, where we'll dive deeper into the manufacturing challenges, regulatory considerations, and Jon's vision for the future of drone industry. Thanks for listening to DroneCast, and don't forget to subscribe and tune in for part 2.
DroneCast, Rethinking Public Safety one drone at a time, is brought to you by DroneSense. To find out more about DroneSense and how our comprehensive situational awareness platform can help you fly, share, and manage your drone program, please visit DroneSense.com. That's DroneSense.com. And then make sure to search for DroneCast in Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Google Podcasts, or anywhere else that podcasts are found. Please don't forget to click subscribe so you don't miss any future episodes. On behalf of the team here at DroneSense, thanks for listening.